the record though, we'll just reinstate it, so it's on record for this meeting as well. I can. I'm ready whenever you are.
How y'all doing today? My name is James Young.
Okay, we're gonna change this. We'll let you know when you're.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, so, as acting chair, Chris Simon for the Point Beach Planning and Development Advisory Board, calls to order the meeting at Tuesday, August 22nd, and it is, it's what, 6:30, 6:32. This evening, we call to order. Let's start with Pledge of Allegiance. With,
Mr. Chairman, doesn't you have to take attendance before we do anything else?
It says Pledge of Allegiance first.
Yes.
Well, the clerk takes the agenda.
Yeah, we'll do the attendance.
In the roll call. Okay.
Yep.
The agenda, we'll go and change.
Yes.
Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America.
United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we can get roll call, please.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Harper,
Present.
Mr. Litch,
Yes.
Mr. McGuire,
Here.
Mr. Sobel,
Here,
Sobel,
thank you.
sorry. Mr. You're gonna have to help me, Sinar,
Swire.
Schweiner, phonetically wrong, sorry. Mr. Remicchio,
Present.
and acting chair Simon.
Present. All right, and what I would like to ask legal is if we are going to nominate another acting chair, or if we carry on, when would that take place? Would that take place at this time, or after the meeting?
You can do that this time.
At this time, I'd like to see if anyone would like to nominate another person to act as chair for this meeting. I can't do it since I'm.
I'll nominate Chris Simon to continue as chairman for this meeting.
Second.
Okay, all right, carry on, thank you. So we want to have comment or approval of the agenda. Sounds like we might want to make an amendment.
I'll go and make a motion to make an amendment to put public comments first, or move it up, just before agenda approval, so 4.5. And then I would like to also add to the agenda, as a double motion here, just a brief discussion, I promise to keep it brief, on the FP&L and Chapel Hill that are doing the underground electrical work. I just wanted to sort of bring that light to the board, what's going on in that area. It's kind of different, nobody seems to have any answers on it, so I thought we could have just a brief discussion on it. Those are the two, that would be somewhere maybe at just before informal items and disclosures, 6.5.
That's 6.5, or we want to put it anywhere in the number 9, comments by members?
I'd like to put it further up.
Okay, all right, is that
Was it just an informational type of thing?
Yeah,
or
I just want to tell you what
Was it open, are we gonna have like a debate or discussion?
yeah, I think we could just briefly, I want to just tell you what went on and what's going on in my community, just so you're aware of it. Yeah, and we can talk about it.
I think that's very important that we bring it to the board. My question for protocol would be, shouldn't it be under new business, since it's something new coming to us? Or if it's just like bringing us aware to something and we're not all commenting, then it can go up earlier. It makes sense to, if it's, like a cursory type item that is just informational.
That's pretty much what it is, because it's really, as I understand it, we can talk about it later, but it's an FPL thing, really not a city thing.
Yeah, I would support input network.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris,
Just
yes?
Informationally, there is no agenda item for public comment,
That's right.
so we'll have to put one.
So we're adding, the motion was to add a public comment.
And the problem to answer your question
you can't put it on new business because that does not afford the public to have access to anything that's set up.
The motion that I had was to put it at 4.5, so just after roll call, so it's very,
For any business.
okay, looking for a second.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a second by, member Amici.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, just so I make sure I have the motion clear, correctly, the motion was to add public comments, as 2.5.
4.5.
4.5, thank you, and to include discussion on the FPL Underground at, I thought that was
6.5.
6.5, thank you so much.
Thank you.
First by, Cortland and second by Remigio.
that's right.
Thank you.
All right, next item is we can have some, motion to approve the, we'd have to have the agenda approval officially. Okay, we're good to go, okay, and then we're at, approval of the minutes of the, previous meeting. A motion to approve the minutes,
We're in public comment, that's before that.
right, but you're saying it's 4.5, which would be 4B, which would be after the approval of the minutes, correct?
If I may, Mr. Chair, the approval, the motion you just made was to amend the agenda. Now you need another motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Yeah, okay,
And then we'll roll on to the rest of it.
okay, very good, very good. So we have the vote to agenda, to, amend the, agenda. Can I have a vote?
Is approved, so moved.
Motion, thank you. And a second?
One second. The motion to approve the amended,
The
agenda was made
agenda
by,
as amended was made by me.
and seconded.
Meet you again, and all in favor?
Aye.
Very good, so moved. Okay, so we have, now we're gonna move into the, public comment. We have a gentleman, ready, if you could please state your name and address before you.
My name is James Young. I'm 319 Northeast 13th Avenue, Boynton Beach, Florida, 33435. I've been a resident for Boynton Beach all my life. I come here today, God sent me here for this reason. I've been going through a lot as of, I'm coming here humble as I can. I was born a certain way in the streets. I'm a changed man now. I'm not that type of person. I want to provide for my family and put food on the table. If that's possible, you guys can help me any kind of way or lead me in the right direction to meet the right people. I have a business, me and my wife, cleaning service. We can't get no jobs. I done tried all kind of things. It's like, the churches, they done talked me through all the, the riffraff, and I done been through it all, like I done overcome it all. Why I still can't get, to be able to feed my family, so I don't have to go the wrong route again. Like, I'm coming here humble, they're forcing me, that's not right. I'm a citizen, I have 8 kids, I have a child on the way, I need to feed my family. Please, somebody help me. Is that possible? If you guys have money and you guys have businesses and stuff like that, I should be able to get help, please. Thank you, and I'm done, and that's all I have to say.
Very good.
So I'll jump in, we can comments. Thank you very much, I very much appreciate that and respect hardworking individual, a lot of children, I've got 3 kids myself. The city is very active, I'm just looking at some of the agenda for the city items. This probably would be better suited for traditional city commission meeting we just had, but I think I may have seen you there before.
Yes.
The Business Over Brews is where business owners in the city connect. They usually meet at the Cinemark Theater at the Boynton Beach Mall. And I think recently they just had a new location.
Okay.
And that's where you can definitely meet city officials and staff and members of the community, give out your business cards. Certainly the city has a lot of office space that needs to be cleaned. That's just something that comes to mind for me. And also on the website, there's a calendar of these type of events. I know there's a Resonate building, that's not a really appropriate one for younger people just getting into the workplace, but I would just take a look at the city calendar of events. I hope that was some help, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
That's right, that's right.
Y'all have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Moving on, do we have any report from staff?
No, we need to, I'm sorry, you need to approve the minutes.
Oh, we haven't done that yet?
No.
Okay, so we can push that forward. Okay, so, motion to approve the minutes, please.
As agenda.
I'm sorry?
Okay, no, you're, never mind.
John,
Do we have approval of this? So, okay, do I have a second? Second. And all in favor?
Okay, just for the record, that was first by Bernicio and second by Portland.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on with the agenda, the amended agenda. Portland, if you'd like to bring forth your
Thank you.
topic.
I appreciate you, Chair, for allowing this to go on, but I will make it. So I live in Chapel Hill, and there's a lot of like scuttlebutt on like, you know, Facebook groups and this sort of thing about this company called Bowen, B-O-W-E-N, and they come with 2 cars and 2 people. One is a licensed notary of the Republic, the other is working for FP&L. They're very nice, very professional, and they come and they hand out this flyer, which I'm glad to pass around. And they come with a contract with your name and my wife's name, my address. They're ready to sign a contract, which is putting a transformer on property of a Boynton Beach resident, and they're knocking on every single door. And they've been doing it, I would guess, for about 6 to 8 months, because I've been hearing about it for that long, which, you know, I'm not really complaining about this incident, I just wanted the board to be aware of it. Certainly people don't like it because it's one of those green boxes that you might see, you know, at an intersection, but about half the size. They don't give you an exact size or dimensions, which I find a little frustrating. So it's about 3 feet by 3 feet by 4, maybe 15, 16 inches. And it will not go on the city easement property, whether it's 10, 12, or 15 feet off of the street. It has to go on the property, from the property of the individuals. And so they're asking you to sign and notarize on the spot, an underground easement. And this is to put this transformer, which replaces, the good thing is there'll be no power lines in Chapel Hill. And, you know, we've been selected, that type of thing, you know, one of the first ones in Palm Beach County to try this new program. They do this kind of borescope boring, you know, to find your electric on the side of your house. They said that the lines will run both directions on all streets in Chapel Hill, 6 feet under the electric lines. And I know that most people that I've encountered in my neighborhood and on these forums are ardently against it. And I kind of see why. Like, for example, where they want to put it on my property is like literally like the best part of my lawn. You know what I mean? If you were to see my house, it would like right in the middle, you know, right where there'd be a green box and you can't plant anything on 3 sides of it or something like that. So I never heard of, you know, this coming to us. And I'll just leave it with this last comment. I'm suspicious. They replaced the cans, the transformers, which I guess is an old technology. They said that those service 2 to 3 homes, a transformer. And this would service maybe 1 to 2 homes, which I think they're going for like something like to try to get the thirds. 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people would be enough to do it. You follow me? Like if I say no and then my neighbor says no, but the other guy says yes, they could probably run power if they just get that many yeses. Well, there seems to be a lot of questions. Neighbors have been asking me, and because I'm on the board, and a few of them know it, and I'm like, I don't know. I'll actually reach out to my commissioner, and they were unaware really of any details because it's an FP&L thing, it's a contract, you know, so which makes sense. So anyway, that's pretty much all of it. I thought I would share that with you. And I'll just pass this around. You're more than welcome to take a look at it and send it back. Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
May I add to this?
I was just gonna ask if we had any comments.
Yes, I live in Chapel Hill as well, and, currently, basically, all the power lines are on poles behind the houses, when it was, way it was built, started back in the late fifties. Yeah, they're gonna be taking power off, but, nobody from Bowman or FPNL that I've talked to seem to know if they're gonna do anything in regards to the telephone and cable, which is still on the poles as well. So, the underground power is nice, yes, might not have to use my generators often, but, it is concerning, because the box they want, in my yard, they wanna put, about 8 feet in front of the house, diagonally from where my meter is. So I'm not, they weren't real sure how they were gonna go to the meter. Anyhow, that's, I'm just adding those 2 cents worth there. The people are very nice, they don't have all the answers though, so. And I don't want this, really didn't want this box that close to my house, who knows?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask a question of you, both of you? If you refuse to sign an easement, are you saying they still have the right to do this on your property? How can that be? It's private property.
I wondered the same thing, but eminent domain, they might be able to, I'm just throwing that out there.
Eminent domain is a very complicated legal process that they would have to go through for every person who says no. I mean, I find that hard to believe that they would even attempt to do that.
I don't think they will. I think they're going for like law of thirds. If they get 1 in 3 or 4 people to do it, that's gonna be enough to feed the area, and they're gonna ask everybody.
Yeah, but if you say no, you can't come on my property. So they can't bore on your property? I mean, we put gas lines in. And everyone agreed to have the gas line going underground. But if somebody says no, they have to stop. We've already experienced that. So I don't understand the comment that 1 in 3 people say yes, they can just go ahead. There's something.
What I'm saying is, if 1 in 3 people say yes, they don't need a green box in front of every house. They don't, I can tell you that right now. He basically said that to me in so many words. They needed probably 1 in 4 houses or 5 houses, and they're just asking everybody, and hope they just get just enough to make it work.
So can I help with this? So I've been through this in another community close by. So what they do is before they come into a community and retrofit from the pole and transformer to underground, they hire a consultant to go in and see, because currently all of your utilities are in city easements in your alleyway or in an dedicated utility easement. They pay franchise fees to the municipality where those franchises are. So for example, Comcast, the cable, telephone, all those pay a franchise fee to the city. Before they do, it's a big expense for them to come in and acquire more easements to do this conversion. So they start with a consultant like they hired here to go in and see, because their first option is place them on private property. So they go that route first, but they do it through a consultant before they go to the municipality, because the next step is to go to the municipality and get permission to change their franchise fee or locations from an alleyway easement fee that they would pay to a per individual basis fee, if that makes any sense. So what they're doing is they do put this company out first. If they get a lot of bites, I don't know if they're using the 3-to-1 method, but they use some methodology to determine if it's worth their while to do. But they are a private company, and if you have FPNL, eventually they are going to want to go to underground. All the Western developments are all underground. It really is all during the storms. Absolutely no outages, not even for 10 minutes. So it's really a great plus for the community. So, but I understand both of you. You're correct, Jay. And if the property owner doesn't want it, then that becomes the no box. And then their only option is to go to the city and acquire the easement, the franchise agreement to put the easement in the alley. Then they're still going to do underground, but it wouldn't take years. The box would be in a different location with a different service agreement. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Right. And the other thing too is if you have
less houses on that block that want a transformer on the property, then they would just have to upsize the transformer to the person that says, that signs the agreement and says that they'll allow a transformer there. They'll have to upsize that transformer to service more homes rather than 1 or 2 homes or 2 or 3 homes. So you might find that there might be a 3x3 box in one area and a 5x4 box, or whatever the sizes are. I will say that I deal with a lot of new projects and homes in the town of Palm Beach, and when any application is brought in front of the ARCOM committee, one of the very first questions that the committee asks is your applicant willing to sign the right-of-way agreement, FPL easement agreement form? And if they, more often than not, they say yes, because they want to try and have the projects approved. So it ends up on the property. I've worked with FPL on projects to relocate and find a better position, a better suited position on property, so it's not just in the center of the yard. They space them out, so like Tom was saying, is the consultant comes in, they draft up kind of, here's, based on all the people that agree to it and say, yes, we allow for it, here's where they're all positioned on the map. Then they start plotting out how they can service all of this. Once they determine how many, they say, what's the distance between houses, boxes, and then you can work with them to say, well, I want to shift that over 40 feet. It typically isn't going to affect the service to the other locations. They're willing to work with you because, especially if you're granting them permission on the property. The larger boxes, you're about a 10 by 10 easement, roughly, and like you said, you have to keep the street side open. But that's kind of a larger size, and you need clearances of 3 or 5 feet sides or front, so it does take up a little bit of space, but the trade-off is not having the issues during storms. And I guess if they get enough no's and they can't service it, then they have to move on.
Then they go to the city.
Well, they go to the city and
So
then.
that's step 2.
Right, step 2,
You
but
won't see all those boxes.
Right, they won't be-
It's a different system.
That's
You don't have those boxes in your yard.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
we have a very full agenda of people who are waiting for
that's
us.
fine.
I'd like to terminate this conversation because it's not that we're not gonna resolve anything.
No, it's an informative discussion at that point.
Okay.
Thank you. Does that kind of cover your?
Yeah, I
you can-
appreciate it, yes, thanks.
That answers, or you got the information out there. Very good. Thank you. Moving on to communications, we did the approval minutes. We have a report from staff.
We have none.
No reports from staff. Thank you. Any old business?
Yes, we do have 2 items.
Thank you.
At July 18th, the city commission hearing, the first amendment of comprehensive plan, EAR updates that implements addition of a property rights elements was approved. And it will be back in October for second hearing for final adoption. And also tree preservation code amendments that was adopted on August 1st, the city commission hearing. It will be implemented immediately. That's it.
Thank you. And moving on to new business. We have, so let me ask the item A and B on this. I guess this would be for legal potentially. Will these be voted on jointly, or would these be treated as individual? Because one is dependent on the approval of the first.
Right, so you'll go ahead and hear the variance item first.
Okay.
You'll vote on that. If that fails, by default, the site plan will fail as
We
well.
cannot move, right?
You'll open up for a vote, but
Sure.
by default, it'll fail.
Right.
But prior to both items, if you have met with the applicant or done anything of the sort, you just have to disclose that, because these are quasi judicial.
Okay, very good. So, I'd like to bring forward, item 7A, Daywalk variance, to approve request for variance from part 3, chapter 3, article 3, section 8.86, point B, point 6 of land development regulations, requiring 8-foot wide active area along North Federal Highway to allow 6-foot active area along North Federal Highway, a variance of 2 feet. Property located at 3103 North Federal Highway in the IPUD zoning district, and the applicant is Philippe Vergara. Very good. And we have a presentation. Mr. Miller, you introduce yourself, please.
I think you need to make disclosures.
Do we have any ex parte from any of the board members with the correspondence or communication with the applicant prior to the meeting? Okay, hearing none. Very good. Thank you.
Good evening. Bradley Miller with Urban Design Studio here, representing the applicant for both the 7A and 7B. The presentation I put together actually incorporates both of them, which would be okay to give that presentation as a whole, and then I think it works. I need to turn this on.
Joint presentation.
Yes.
We're just voting on separate. Two separate motions.
Right.
How much of that do you need me to repeat? I'll start over.
I think we good.
Right, I'm good? Okay. All right, thanks. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to make that presentation as a whole, and then I think the discussions and the vote could be separate, but.
Right. Do we have any other? Everybody's fine with that? Carry on.
Thank you. This is a project on the south end of the city down by Seaborn Cove off of Federal Highway. We have located around the Seaborn Cove is actually to the south of the property. It's the property's on the west side of Federal. There is a pocket of single-family homes that's within Palm Beach County still, believe it or not, to the west of us, between Old Dixie and the property. And then to the north is a self-storage building that's existing, and then Waterside Village is on the east side of Federal Highway. This project was approved previously as an IPUD, which allows a density of 20 units an acre. The prior approval was for a 40-unit condo project, which I believe was going to be rental. Our proposal, which I'll present to you here, is actually for 25 fee simple townhomes ownership situation, which I know has been something that the city has been looking for. And so we're almost a quarter of the density that we could have in the project. Just to give you some of the background, this is the old site plan that was approved previously. I meant to check with staff before. I don't even think it's in effect now. But this was a plan that and a little bit of a circuitous route through the property and bunched in. Part of the application is a master plan, which is what's depicted on the screen for our project. And so to give this a little description, Federal Highway is on the right-hand side. We have an access road that comes straight down the middle. Then there's units that are on both sides, so there's 6 buildings total. Right up on the frontage, there's tracks for recreational tracks, and then there's another one in the southwest that I'll show you a little better. But all these areas that are in the pink and the green and the yellow will all be under control of the HOA. And then the lots themselves, you can see some faint red lines in there that are will be the unit owner's property, which is basically the footprint of the building, out to the driveway. So site plan wise, this is going to be a gated community. We've gone to DOT and they've given us the go ahead to be able to have a gate. We had to set it back a distance from the roadway, which is the pink line that's on there. Again, it's 25 townhomes that are 2-story. Each garage is 2 cars. All the garages are gonna have the electric charging capability in them. We have 6 guest spaces that are scattered as you go down the road between the buildings. There's some singles and some double spaces and a few up in the rec areas. The blue areas, the dark blue areas, there's one in the top right, bottom right, and then bottom left. The top right is the clubhouse and pool area. Bottom right is a gym will be primarily indoor, but a little bit of outdoor space there too, for those who want to work out in 110-degree weather. And then in the back, the southwest corner is a dog park that will be for the residents. As we work through this, part of the variance that we're gonna discuss, actually with the help of staff, we came up, I think, with a great compromise here for that front space in the pool area. The frontage of the building itself, you can see is tucked up into the corner. And then there's going to be a green wall that runs along the frontage of the building, which will be a great feature. We have some pictures of that we'll show here in a moment. Landscape-wise, there's buffers all the way around. We have we're required a 12-foot buffer along the northern property line and the western property line. That buffer will have a 6-foot wall within it, and then the different layers of the vegetation material within it. The south buffer, adjacent to this similar type of project, is a 5-foot landscape buffer. And then along the frontage, there's just pedestrian zone requirements that are part of the code where we do have street trees within that green area along the frontage of Federal Highway. So to beautify that, thanks to Carol Perez at AGT Landscape, this gives you a good depiction of how the project will come out with vegetation in the buildings themselves. This is showing the green wall. Along the frontage, the left side of the screen is the frontage of the project. And for these areas along Federal Highway, the code is looking for a connection to the street. These units that are in there, I think I can report this because there might be prospective buyers in the room. Felipe, who's here, is looking to market these north of $1 million. So these are some serious homes to go in there. And the one thing that we worked on the hardest, I think, with staff was how to deal with the frontage. So these are considered active areas, having the pool space up there and the gym space along the frontage. And then the green wall is, you can see the green strip on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side is an elevation where at the very top you have the clubhouse windows, and that's accessible to the street, as well as the green wall that continues around. There is a condition to work on the design of the green wall to take out some of those slats and make it more green. So this was a depiction of what we initially started with, and then with the conditions, we'll continue working with staff on that staff, as well as a designer specific for that wall to create that feature along the frontage. And then the southern space, again, we have the gym there that will have the glazing. There's conditions along that as well for the glazing along the frontages of those buildings. And then Palm Tran asked us to incorporate a bus shelter at the very south end. I've got a few projects happening on Federal Highway. I think we're gonna have a bus shelter about every 18 feet. By the time we're done, they don't let up. So the issue there, not to digress, but the issue is that they have the bus stops, but they don't have the shelters and the benches and everything to go along with it. So, we're trying to work with them along the way to say, look, we'll maybe don't move the bus stop, but we'll contribute to monetarily to putting a structure at an existing stop, so people already know that it's there, and then they get benefit. I digress. But, as part of this, it's actually built in, the shelter itself is gonna be built into the structure, so it blends right into it. The variance itself, the pedestrian zone, I have to look at the code every time. It's a layer, there's 3 layers, starting from not the property line that all of us are typically used to doing, but from the edge of the curb line of Federal Highway. And then the green area, the green line there is a street tree area. And then the blue line, which overlaps by 2.5 feet into the street tree area, is a sidewalk that's 10 feet required by code in this area. And then the requirement is to have an 8-foot active zone. Staff might throw something at me here, but my personal opinion is the active zones make a lot more sense to me when you have commercial activity along there where you have tables and chairs and retail display, more so than a residential project, but it's in the code this way. And so we've dealt with it with these active spaces of the pool area, clubhouse, and the gym along the frontage. So through the redesign, and then on top of that, there's a 10-foot utility easement that's in there as well that's measured from the property line. To piggyback off of the prior discussions about the undergrounding, we do have conditions to participate in the undergrounding of utilities here, not only along the frontage of Federal, but there's also a power line on the south property line that will be underground. I don't know if it's come to you yet, but the staff is trying to figure out a method to do that on an individual project basis with FPL is just so cost prohibitive, it won't happen. But if we break it down and there's a fund to contribute to where FPL can come in and do 1 mile, 5 miles, whatever they choose to do at a time, there's a fund there to provide it, and there's a utility easement for that to go in. And then I'm advising all my clients to say, put some conduit in when you're constructing it now, and so it's there and can just be pulled through rather than ripping up your entire frontage. So that's going in. So if you pile all that together, you have about 20.5 feet from the edge of curb to where the building line should be. And what we're proposing to do is to cut that down by 2 feet. Our building actually goes to 18.5 feet. But it does then provide an area for the green wall to have a space to basically drain into. There's a little more space up against the building for some landscape space. Overall, there would be about 16 feet of pavers there because as part of this the sidewalk and active area, all of it gets paved with the exception of the areas for the tree wells for the street trees. So there's still plenty of space for pedestrians to walk along there. There's a part of our plan is to incorporate a bench if somebody wants to take a breather along there. So I'm showing this on the north part of it just so we can zero in on the detail, but this would apply to the entire frontage. So it'd be reducing that space down by 2 feet, which I think when constructed, you wouldn't even know that there's a difference there. And then you have a little more greenery to complement that space. Architecturally, probably used to seeing the contemporary modern style that's out there now, which this would be. There's the palette, there are different shades of off-whites and taupes and accents in darker colors. So these are showing the elevations of the units themselves. there's two different types of buildings. There's 5 of them that are 4-unit buildings, and then there's one that's a 5-unit building to get to the 25 unit count. Don't do the math, I don't know if I did that right. And these are always great to show, the renderings. These get, I guess, the AI part of the presentation. It almost looks like it's already out there. So where you're looking is like if you're going northbound on Federal, looking at the entrance, there's the green wall component and the entry gate, and then a unit behind. This is a little more focused on the green wall and the clubhouse and how there will be that, the glazing, the glass work of the clubhouse to be able to create that connection out to the street. This is looking more straight on, down the center. And then this is the southern frontage, this is the gym, and you can see on the left-hand side, the extension of the little projection there for the shelter for the bus shelter in that location. This gives you the whole frontage, as if you're walking on the east side of Federal Highway looking across. We feel like this is going to be a great addition to the south end of the city. I actually represented Seabourn Cove, which I think was over 15 years ago, and they started it, and the south end is really filled in nicely with the uses through there, and I think this is taking one of those small parcels that I hear about a lot, of taking a small parcel and making the best of it. So with that, we're open to any questions or comments.
Very good, thank you for your presentation. I'd like to open up to public comment. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, I'd like to open up to the board. Would you like to?
One of the things you say is that you're asking for 2 feet and you're making a representation that it's not going to affect. How does the smaller area, particularly going down south, there seems to be I don't know about that piece of property, there's all little houses on there. How much, do they have the full 8 feet setback there? It doesn't look like it. That's what I'm wondering about.
You know, Mr. Sobel, if it wouldn't be weird, I would almost run over there and hug you.
It would be weird.
Because that was, the staff, Luis is probably like sick of hearing it, because we were saying the same thing of Seabourn Cove doesn't have it, the self-storage doesn't have it. But it's part of the code now. It's a word called planning that somehow I fell into a long time ago, and it's to try to create that streetscape as properties redevelop.
So what you're telling me is, what you're developing and proposing is consistent with what's north of it and what's south of it, correct?
It's quite a bit more of pedestrian space.
You're getting more than what's north of it, south of it, okay?
Correct.
You're not negatively impacting any neighborhood. That's all I want. Okay, and that to me is a very important factor, right? They're asking for a variance. And in my life up north, when I was legal, it was always a question of what's the impact on neighbors. In your case, you're telling me there is no impact. There's no negative impact. In fact, even though you're only getting 2 feet less, there's a positive impact. So I'm not going to comment on the architecture or anything like that. I'm just concerned about this variance and what the effect on the neighborhood would be. And I, for one, don't feel there's any negative impact. Maybe some of the members do, but sometimes I expect a long debate about this. And you answered the question that was critical to me, so
And one more thing, if I could, it's to me, I think there's some corrections or adjustments to the code that are out there where this area along these requirements of 5-foot street trees, a 10-foot sidewalk, and an 8-foot activity zone run the whole length of Federal Highway. When you get into the downtown area, the sidewalk goes to 8 feet, which it reduces it to 2 feet already. So to me, what we're asking for is consistent with other areas in the city, including the downtown area, where it's still, which in my mind is going to be much more pedestrian intense than it will be here. So I think what we're asking for is very reasonable, and you're absolutely right. If anything, it's an improvement to the neighbors.
I just want to make one more comment, living in Boynton Beach. I drive down Federal Highway, Boynton Beach, Delray, Boca. And it is always disappointing that Federal Highway in Boynton Beach doesn't have the same, I use the word panache for anything else, lack of anything else. I think this would be a valuable addition, as you propose it, to upgrading the whole Federal Highway ambience. So I am very much for it. And again, I will defer to anyone else who wants to take exception to that.
Now you might get a hug from Mr. Nichols.
I don't want it. Just very quickly, I agree with Mr. Sobel. The regulations are not, don't jive. The city regulations and the CRA regulations don't mesh. They're not the same. So you're looking at different things. When they talk about the 18-foot setback, they are talking about an activity zone, which would typically be, you'd put tables out there if you had a restaurant, or you'd have face painters out there if you had a bar, or whatever you do. But there's no commercial permitted in an IPUD. So you're not gonna have any commercial use of that space, that activity space, because there's no commercial entity permitted to use it. So why not give it to the people and let them walk on it? You've got a wider space now than you had before. You don't need that extra space for that activities, but you've still got a decent curbside walking space that people will enjoy, and it will look good as you drive past it. So I think it's a good idea.
Since my first meeting, I've been a very big proponent that when you have a developer willing to give something that the city wants that is nice, you need to work with the developer, and I think 2 feet is minuscule at best, and that's really all I have to say. Yeah. I agree with everything that's been said.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mel. So I believe staff is in support of this as well. It's a very minor request that you're making here, and the points are well justified in that the active area, the wide active area that's being proposed in the future is typically for the outdoor seating, al fresco dining. But keep in mind that active area can also be plant, could be seating, fountains. The active area can be other things, but looking at the adjoining properties, I concur with my fellow board members and staff's recommendations to justify the variance on this property. And it is exciting to see a market rate project come into the city, and I thank you for that. And although I like more of the Mediterranean style, I think it is very clean and crisp and different, and I think that's really needed now. So the contemporary style will work that properly. So thank you.
Great. Sure. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I also agree with pretty much everything that was said, and I'd like to just add a couple more comments that it's very welcoming to see ownership properties, parcels being introduced. The city has a habit of approving rental properties like crazy, especially downtown, and I'm glad to see a developer go for something like this and go for something contemporary and fresh, and I approve. I will agree with my board members up here. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Basically, I really have no comment other than everything that's been said. I agree with, and it's nice to see some development of this type going on in Boynton Beach.
Very good, thank you. Great presentation. Project looks wonderful. I agree with everything that's kind of been said here. Just making note that to yourself, well, and yourself, Brad, as well, that when you're developing, when you're constructing something, and you submit for permit, you're following the current codes. When the C1 code and some of these other projects were developed, the code was different at that time, so that's why the setbacks were what they are. So that's just a little bit of justification why the C1 code and the others have a smaller setback, right? So that's what was verbiage at the time. I agree that it definitely falls more in line. IPUD, everything that's been said, don't have to have the active area. For dining, you did mention potentially adding some benches or something out there for passersby, so that kind of gives it a little bit more use and activity, right? So just to confirm, the buildings on the north and south ends, the front wall or the facade wall is into the setback, right? It's not that that wall is behind and then the site wall that's out is within the 2 feet that you're requesting, right? It's the gym and the, right? So
It's all consistent at that 18.5 feet.
right, so that's coming out. So it's not, like I said, it's not a great difference. I'm sure that the site plan could be reworked a little bit, the buildings shifted, so you have one space, for example, in between the buildings, and then the building shift in. I don't think it's enough to really impact the overall site plan design. I do have a question though, what's the requirement of the 5-foot buffer on the south side? Is that just based on building set, like the lot size and the zoning? Is that like, why are you 12 on the north and west and only 5 on the south side?
When you're adjacent to a similar use,
The
like
type.
Seaboard Code.
Right, okay, that's what I was wondering if it had to do something with that.
Yeah, the north side, I had to make the argument of, well, why didn't the self-storage give the 12-foot buffer? But I lost on that one too.
Right.
But that's on the north side, because of the differences of the uses.
That's right, okay,
Then-
perfect. That's
and
where
then-
my head was
Then
going.
the same to the west, we have multifamily adjacent to single family.
Right, okay. So with that being said, the only thing that I would maybe suggest to the developer, in the design itself, everything's great with the design, is because you have some of those views, you have a lot of glazing on the south and north sides. Maybe those that are a little bit more wall or less window because you are looking into those, the storage unit or the storage building to the north, for example. You got a 6-foot wall, you've got trees everywhere, they are 25 feet. I mean, there's still gonna be a lot of view through that. So something to consider on the design side as far as allowing a little more privacy for the residents within the property and giving them a little better view, really. That's it. But other than that, I think that everything's logical and makes sense. So do we have any more comments?
No, but how about a motion?
That's where I was headed next.
Okay. Then I make it.
Please.
I move that we approve item 7A, Baywalk variance ZNCV 23-003. Do I have to read the whole variance?
You can say as presented.
As presented to us.
Second.
All right, very good. Do we take a roll call or do we want to, no? All right, those in favor?
You can do it.
Aye.
Unless you turn.
Aye. Those against? Hearing none, motion passes. Now, do we, since you already jointly presented, can I hear a motion to approve?
Well, we need to go ahead and do the same type of protocol in terms of opening it up for public comment.
Oh, public comment, right, okay. So we have had the presentation for item 7B, Baywalk, which is the approved request for major site plan modification. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none. We've already had board comments.
No.
Hearing
No,
none.
no,
We've not had on this? Okay.
Are there any board comments?
Yes. So, I'll go first.
Yes.
So just a couple of concerns or questions. I see the gate. I get it, it's $1 million homes, you want a gate.
is it a manned gate, an unmanned gate? By the renderings look like it's an unmanned gate, so it'd be electronic.
Correct, the electronic gate. And how it did for DOT to sign off, we had to, and actually we proposed it, we don't like to make it overly public, but it's automated from the outside. So you pull up to it and it opens automatically. Gives a perception of gated, without having the turnaround issue if you get caught at the gate.
So my concern is that like, I don't know, Saturday, 4 o'clock, you got Amazon shows up, you got Uber Eats, you got Josie, your best friend, and you got Mike from down, neighborhood over, all trying to get in at the same time, they're pushing the button, and you're gonna back up on a federal highway.
Yeah, that's my point. The first one, Amazon, I think was the first one you said, they pull up to the gate, it just automatically opens. Everybody else follows behind.
Understands, okay.
There's no
So it's
call
gated,
box.
but it's, got it, that makes sense.
But
Okay,
yet the residents will have a device of some form to activate the gate.
okay, so then my other, a more question or thing to, I guess, take in consideration is I see you're putting electronic chargers in every garage.
Correct.
So from experience in the last 5 years, I think I've rebuilt 7 to 8 homes that have caught fire due to these chargers. So what in the building process is being done, because you got 4, sometimes 5 connected at once. If one house goes up, what's stopping all of them from going up?
That one I have no answer for, not knowing that was coming. I would guess that the building official doesn't either at this point, it's so new. But
More consideration of
point
things
taken,
going forward.
absolutely. I know there's, I can start throwing terms around the firewalls and things like that, but I really don't know how those will be protected in that way. But the point noted.
Other than that, I think it was beautiful, it was great. I love the modern architecture personally. And I think in the year I've been here, it's the first fee simple project that's been brought before us that I can recall. I think most of it's, like you said, rentals and things like that, so. All right, thank you.
Very good. Dennis?
Thank you. The EV charging stations, are they gonna be level 1 or level 2, or which level do you know?
One.
We have electronic capability, people can put in.
Yeah, we can.
If you like.
Sorry, you're gonna have to come up to the.
So they're gonna have a connection will be there and available for each resident to put in the system that they need and want to have down.
So it's gonna be, you're gonna have conduit and wired for probably 220?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
So-
that's probably level 2. That's not the super fast.
No, it's level 2 is
Level 1 is 110. Right, level 2 is 220, but it's not the fast, super fast.
no, it's not, it still takes hours to
Yes.
charge.
Now back to my real question. What are the mailboxes gonna be like in this project?
Mailboxes will be by the clubhouse. There's a parking space there, so it'll be a gang mailbox.
Okay, so everybody has to come in, you're gonna stop. The parking space by the clubhouse, is that the same as the turn around to back out if you can't get to the gate? Or is that a different parking space?
It's a designated parking space.
Okay.
Ideally,
There's only
what
one
people
car at
would
a time?
do would go through the gate, park their car at their house and go for a walk that evening. But
Because
Yes.
we've seen things where they put the gang mailboxes in the clubhouse somewhere, and then the property is all over the place, and there's, by the time, this may not be a situation where everybody's coming home at 5:30. But on situations like that, if you've got 5 people backing up, stopping to get their mail, then you're out of parking spaces real quick. And I know this is not your issue, this is the way the post office says they want it, but, it's, okay.
yeah, if I could give some feedback, I live in a townhouse community, 64 units. I've always, been able to, actually I enjoy the walk to go get the mail.
Yeah.
So,
I like the design of these buildings. They are different from what you're gonna see elsewhere up and down Federal Highway. They look crisper and cleaner and newer, if that's a look. I think it's good. Thank you. Ready for a motion?
Very good. Do we still have, do we have any other, is there any other members that like to come?
I just have a question.
Sure.
On the green wall, is that living or is that the fake?
living.
How long do you expect it to last?
The green walls are, they're touchy, you know. So the design needs to be done right to be able to get the irrigation there. And sure, with time, like any landscape, it will need to be replenished, replaced. So, I don't have a specific time period for it to go in there, but, it would, to me, it would be, if a tree dies in 5 years, that tree is supposed to be replaced, same scenario.
The code will address
I do have a question, if I might. Is there gonna be once this is developed, is this gonna be turned over to a homeowners association with responsibility for doing planting and things like that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, and I live in one now, and that's not something we can deal with. Homeowners, if they take pride in where they live, they're gonna spend the money. If they don't, the place is gonna fall apart. But when you're starting to sell these upper end homes, people are willing to spend the money to keep it looking pristine. Can I make a motion now?
Do we have any more comments? I'd just like to make one comment, just I appreciate the green wall, I think it looks good as designed. I appreciate the combination of materials, living as well as the, maybe it's like an hay or some sort of hardwood or something that's in there, I can tell. But I do want to find out, like, what is the waste and recycling kind of plan within this? I don't see a location for a dumpster, which I'm glad to see. I wouldn't imagine anyone living in this community would want to necessarily have it within sight, but what is the protocol for?
Yeah, each of they'll have the roll-out bins within their garage space, roll it out on the trash day.
So it'll be managed like some of the other communities in their area.
At the very west end there is a T for the roadway, which was designed not only for trash, but also for emergency vehicles to be able to come in and use that T turnaround.
Right, that's what I assumed once it's all manufactured.
So the garage space roll-out bins.
Perfect, very good. Okay, very good, I think that answers everything. Do we have a motion?
Try again. I move that we approve item 7B, Baywalk MSPM 23-004 and MSMPMD 23-003 as specified in our agenda.
Good, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those against? None, motion passes.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have under new business, item 7C, the AMP warehouse storage building. Approve request for community design appeal of part 3, chapter 4, article 3, section 3.A, architectural enhancements. Requirement to provide architectural enhancements in the north side facade, relief part 3, chapter 4, article 3, section 3B, exterior treatments and finishes, requiring buildings to be finished in brick or veneer, stone or stone veneer, stucco, and split face.
And, Mr. Chair, we can just have another disclosure. I know we took it for the other items, but, just for the record, the next meeting, we can just take a general one at the beginning, so you don't have to do it.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, good. So, prior to presentation, we have who's presenting this, not listed. Do we have any expertise with board members? Is there communications with the applicant prior to this meeting? None, not myself. The applicant, please introduce yourself and let's see what we have.
Good evening, my name is Fernando Nunez. I'm with Architectural Consulting Design. I'm representing the applicant, American Moldings and Plastics. We're here today to ask for approval or community design appeal application for the property located at 870 West Industrial Avenue. The code sections that we're looking to obtain relief for is Part 3, Chapter 4, Article 3, Section 3, and then items A, B, and H. Item A states that facade articulation has architectural interest in a variety to the massing of the building and prevent plain monotonous facades. And so they have a list of the items that you need to provide to enhance the aesthetics of the proposed project. And we're asking for relief of these items on 3 of the 4 facades. The 3 facades which are not facing the right of way and are not visible to the public. For item B, the code states that all exterior finishes on the building have to conform to one of these items. Item B, so the exterior of the buildings must be either brick or veneer, stone, or stucco, or split face. We are proposing the use of metal cladding on a metal steel frame structure. And the last section that we're asking for relief from is the requirement to have internal downspouts in the building. Since this is a pre-manufactured, pre-engineered metal building, they can't change their fabrication process to incorporate this item in the code. So move to the next page. So the subject property contains an existing industrial building approximately 16,000 square feet. You can see to the aerial map to the right, it's the red rectangular shaded area. And we are proposing a standalone 8,000 square foot metal storage building. Please keep in mind that the geometry of the site is that the site, the frontage of it is 100 feet wide and it's approximately 600 feet deep. So, let's see. And essentially I also want to point out that the front of the site is on West Industrial Ave, and that entire area is only accessible from one entry point off of Boynton Beach Boulevard. So this is not a thoroughfare through the city. This is essentially just an industrially zoned area where everyone that's coming to this location is either working in that location or seeking some sort of industrial, or there's a lot of auto shops and things of the like back there as well. So I'd like to move into the criteria regarding community design appeal and the points we need to hit as far as obtaining relief. So the first one is that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The existing land use is light industrial, and the future land use map also designates this area as light industrial, so it's not going to be changing in use or character anytime soon. Then that it's not going to significantly detract from the livability or appearance of the city, and will be consistent with the established or desired character of the area / development plan. As I mentioned, this area is currently used as light industrial. A lot of the buildings that are within this industrial neighborhood have similar character. There's a lot of metal buildings in the area, and what we're proposing, although it doesn't meet the letter of the code, is not only going to match the character of the area, it's also going to enhance it because it's a newer building. It's going to be set back in the property, and then we're proposing, and you'll see in one of the later slides, a lot of landscaping up along the right of way to kind of conceal whatever can be viewed. As a matter of fact, since the application was made, the applicant has gone and provided slatted screen to the front property, the fence that encloses the property. So as it is, you can't really even look into the property. There's no stop signs there. There's no lights near this particular parcel, so there's really no reason for anyone to stop and start peeking back into the property. Item C states that, you know, we have to verify that the project is consistent with the purpose and standard for which deviation is requested. Granting the request will equally or better meet the purpose of the standard to be appealed. So the applicant is of the understanding that the code items for which relief is sought is intended to result in aesthetic improvement to the area. So the proposed project includes Bahama-style shutters, decorative louvers, decorative banding, trim, stucco wainscot. We're doing new site lighting with LED lighting throughout the entire property on the new building and the existing building, and we're doing new landscaping throughout. So where it's not just going to be located in the back where the new building is going, it's going to be going along the north-south property lines and up along the west property line, fronting the right-of-way. Item D states that it is intended to save or preserve existing trees before. We are not removing any landscaping or vegetation from the site. What's currently on the east side of the site is a big concrete pad, and there used to be like a truck, well, there used to be a silo back there. And so this entire area was just impervious, big slab of concrete, and we're actually pulling some of that out to put some landscaping in there. And then the rest, as mentioned, throughout the site. Adverse environmental impacts that cannot be prevented. We're not with the understanding or knowledge that this project will have any adverse environmental impact on the site or the area. As far as property values of abutting adjacent land, as I said, we believe that the project is consistent with the existing architectural vocabulary of the area. We're also adding, like you mentioned again, a lot of landscaping. The facade that is facing the street does meet the letter of the code. So the portion of the building that is visible from the right-of-way meets the letter of the code. And the downspouts are on the north and south facades. So having them exposed does not necessarily impact what's visible from the street. As far as reducing the quality or quantity of light, the proposed building is a single-story building. It does not, the orientation of the site is east to west. So if you take either the summer or the winter solstice, the building's not tall enough to cast any shadows to any of the adjacent properties. I guess you can make the argument that all the landscaping will improve the air quality, but you know, that's just a guess. Let's see, that it is necessary to the objectives of the city to assist with economic development and business promotion. As it stands now, the factory is a limited size and they're using the existing building to store merchandise, and some of it has actually overflowed out into the parking. And so they're limited on the number of manufacturing equipment and employees they can have. So approving the project and allowing what is essentially, you know, just call it a fancy shed out in the back of the property to relocate the product will allow them to bring in more equipment, more employees, obviously generate more revenue, more tax revenue for the city, et cetera, et cetera. As far as that the project meets the purpose and intent of these regulations, but conflicts with another site development standard or requirement, including sustainable development and green initiatives. Obviously, we don't believe that this is causing any issues with sustainability. We don't see any other conflicts with any other sections of the code. In fact, there's a quality that's inherent to metal buildings that lends itself to sustainability. This particular building that is being proposed to be put on the site. Oh my God, but yeah, I mentioned before that the, as you can see in the rendering, that the top elevation is the one that's facing West Industrial Ave. That's the right of way. You can see how we've incorporated the awning type structures over the man doors. You've got the decorative louver up in the top center. There's a wainscot banding that comes at about 42 inches on center and up above the floor. And then below that, there's these stucco cladding panels that can be fastened to the metal building. They can't be put the entire height of the building. Obviously, that creates issues with moisture retention, et cetera, and this is about as high up as they can go. You can see on the lower elevation that those 4 vertical white lines, those essentially are the downspouts that we're proposing. And then to the right of those 2 renderings, you can see all the landscaping that's being proposed to the front of the site up along West Industrial Ave. And then we can move to the next one. And then so this is what I was mentioning before, that in regards to sustainability and portions of the code that we are complying with, is that this metal building is actually constructed at 70% recycled materials. It's estimated to have a useful lifespan of about 75 years, and after that, it can be recycled and repurposed again. Again, the new landscaping throughout the property, the shutters, the louvers, decorative banding, decorative trim. We've provided butterfly attracting plants, new LED site lighting throughout the entire parking area, new LED on the building, both buildings existing and proposed, and we're adding a level 2 electric vehicle charging station at the front of the property on the west side, where the ADA parking is, actually it's not the ADA parking, it's on the west side of the building when you first come into the property. Next slide, please. And as far as the sustainability, these are the different points. The code requires that for, remember, if I recall correctly, for a project of 5,000 square feet or higher, you need to achieve 25 overall points as far as sustainability. And these are the items in which we are meeting the code requirement and the 25 points. And that's essentially the presentation.
Very good, thank you. Do we have any public comments on this application? Seeing none, we have comments from the board.
A question first. North of the building is the present production facility, correct? On the north side of this proposed building. On the east side is that Interstate 95?
No, it actually backs up to a railroad track, and then
okay.
there's,
I couldn't, you went through quickly. I knew it was something, okay.
yeah, there's West Industrial Ave, and then there's East Industrial Ave.
Everything was fine. The only question I have is, what is to the south of you? Where are you putting in your building?
I mean, it's another industrially zoned parcel. I don't know what they operate as. But I know a little bit further down the street, there's some car shops and holes, like car
I was
upholstery.
wondering what screening are you going to have on that, from that property? I don't know if there are windows in that south building facing your property that are going to see your building or not. Are you proposing to have a wall there? I just wonder what you're proposing.
May I address? Yes, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Angelo. I'm one of the owners of American Molding and Plastics. Oh, no problem. My name is Chris Angelo. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing us to present today. I'd like to answer the comment that you just asked. On the south side of the building, there is a Gator storage, and on the north side, there is the paper lake. So on the south side, there's a large storage facility, and on the north side, there's Paper Lady, which is a paving company, which they has a large parking lot which they store their equipment at. So it's commercial on both sides.
Okay.
And we do have a landscape buffer current on the property on both sides, both the north and the south.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good. Member Lynch, you want to comment?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just a real quick, somebody should call Ace Hardware, make sure that they have plenty of Krylon paint handy for the taggers to find out that there's a brand new steel building going on. That's all. I think it's sort of.
Thank you.
Don't see an issue with it. It's light industrial. It looks like a light industrial building to me. Looks like we have a business that's looking to invest in the city, and I think that we need to help and invest back. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I concur with the rest of the comments from the board. I'll be supporting this, but just a footnote to be thinking in the future. As many of you know, the legislature recently amended the state statute with regards to our ability to zone and restrict height and density for affordability projects that are built in industrial zoning as well. So in the future, you may see more residential projects in that zoning district, believe it or not, because of what the legislature just did with allowing basically unlimited height and density and exempts, really, it ties our hands with home rule, because as a municipality, we want to be able to control our own zoning districts. But this is a minor request that you're making, and it's a great, nice project, and so I'll be supporting it. But in the future, you may have residential neighbors. It's not always going to be that.
Member Gordon, sorry?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering if staff had recommendations on this and what staff's thoughts were.
The recommendations staff are in there.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Craig Pinder. I'm one of the planners with the city. Staff does not have any recommendations. We only recommend to approve the project. We don't have any conditions of approval. The applicant did a great job throughout the process with providing the additional landscaping and additional architectural features.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, you might be overdeveloping for West Industrial.
Well, we are actually trying to beautify that street. That's quite candidly, it needs a little help in certain sections there, and we hope to support that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I have no comment myself. I think it's fine. It's an accessory building, and it's expanding the business. I think it's benefit. Do we have a?
Feel free.
Well, I didn't know if you had. I didn't know if you had a another comment. No, I reached. Yeah, I opened it up to public comment earlier right after the presentation. So, having more comments on the board, looks like we might have a motion.
I have moved that the board approve AMP warehouse storage building request CDPA 23-010 as specified in the agenda this evening.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we want to say all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those against?
We both just second at the same time, so you can pick one.
Okay, I'll
Just
see
needs
this
to
one.
serve spell.
That's fine. And we, I'll vote again. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those against? Hearing none, motion passes. So approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to say thank you to Craig Pinder from Planning and Zoning Board.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're gonna move on to our next item on the agenda. Item 7D, wireless communication facility annual registration. Request to approve modifications amending Part 3 Land Development Regulations, Part 3 Article 5, Section 13, wireless communications facilities to allow for annual registration process and fee. Yes. Oh.
Good evening, Chairman, and Planning and Development Board members. My name is Jayan, Principal Planner with the Planning and Zoning. I'm here to present a little quick tax amendment to wireless communication facility requiring annual registrations and establishing fees, associated fees. So go over with a quickly summary of the changes. First thing, annual registrations and association fees will be established through this code amendment. And WCF, which is a wireless communication facility on a publicly owned facility on the property, and clean up some regulations regarding unused WCF. To go over with a quick brief overview of the amendment. So currently the land development regulations requires annual registrations as well as the certifications. However, it does not outline or regulate the registration standards or necessary information to be provided.
it does not also outline the procedure of the regulation, annual registrations. So the proposed amendments will define the requirements and establish associated fees for annual registrations provided by wireless communication facility owner, operator, and providers. The amendments propose to eliminate the current the process and standards for the wireless communication facility on the publicly owned property, but requires to enter written agreements with the city. So the way the code is written is that it provides the way how it needs to be entered the agreements, what process it has to go through, what even including bonds or other detailed elements. We are striking through, but this needs to be really, depends on these communications facilities and where it's located. That need to be established through the agreement accepted by the city attorney and ultimately approved by the city commission. So we are striking through. One of the things that I want to emphasize that this code was adopted back in 2010 and then codified, amended again in 2012. So the code itself is literally getting 12 years old. So we are cleaning up those languages to be more adapted to the current trend and then as needed. And obviously those type of agreements will be reviewed very carefully through the city attorney as well as staff prior to placement for the city commission hearings. Lastly, the amendment proposed to clean up some of the languages regarding abandoned, unused, or unsafe wireless communication facilities to direct the facility owners and then the operator to follow procedure established in Part 2, Chapter 10, Article 2, Abandoned Property, as well as the Florida Building Code. The way the code is outlines the details of how this needs to be, once it's abandoned or unused, how it needs to be follow the procedure. It should never be codified in the LDR. It should be following these, Part 2, as well as it needs to be followed the Florida Building Code based on determination by the building official. So we are cleaning up those languages. That concludes my presentation, and I'm here for any questions.
Very good, very good. I need to say one thing really quick. For legal, is there a way to recuse yourself from a certain topic? Because one of the picture you posted, I'm highly affiliated with that parcel, they're my employer. So I just want to make sure.
This is a legislative item in the sense that it's a policy decision that you're making for a code amendment. Are you and Miranda direct, you said that's your employer?
Correct, yeah, I just don't want to be involved with any voting that may positively or negatively impact them. I don't know how to put that.
It's not necessarily site specific though. It's.
Okay, just the one picture they posted was that site, that's why I'm questioning.
I think it's just an example of the
Correct.
type of facility.
Correct. This is one of our facilities that we have a total of 13 sites, and this is one of our facilities at the private property. It wasn't not has to do with any particular this code amendment related to this property. It's just that I remember this property, so I was using.
I just want to make sure that it's known that I want to vote in a positive manner for them. If it,
I think that would be fine. You can recuse yourself from this vote.
No, it's not. It's only, you can only recuse yourself if there is a direct conflict.
Okay.
So in this case, it's a policy-wide decision that you're making. Your employer's not directly benefiting, and neither are you.
That's right. I just wanted to bring it to the table and make sure.
Yeah, if this was an application before us, where your employer was coming forward to put a facility on that particular property, that's a different case and scenario. But this is a legislative change that's applicable throughout the entire city.
Okay, that's right. We can do.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if this is anything we need to open up for public comment.
We don't have an ordinance up
Yeah,
for
it's not
us.
really. So I'm just gonna allow the board to make a.
I'm good with this. This is a staff
Right,
recommendation.
this is housekeeping.
This is,
Right.
nuts and bolts.
Do we have anyone that would like to comment on the board? If not,
Is there anything more involved in this than cell towers?
You mean more involved with?
Any other kinds of equipment, any kind of cable systems?
Absolutely, the wireless communication facilities per the LDR definition, that includes anything within their compounds, which is including any type of equipment as well as tower.
Right, but there needs to be, it has to be a cell tower location to be included. I'm thinking of my condominium just got rid of Comcast and we now have Bluestream, which is a fiber company. Would they be involved and they do wireless communications in that they set up a Wi-Fi within your own home, which is a stretch for wireless communications, I'm sure, but still not.
Yes, so these wireless communication facilities, not just referencing to the on-ground, these are also applicable to the, attached to the building.
Okay, all right, so under this ordinance, if the cable company or the fiber optics company that we have now were to go out of business, the city would be able to require them to remove their equipment?
Correct, if this is a, fiber optics may not be applicable to on the wireless communication facilities. These are more, telecommunication towers and, in like Verizon, AT&T, and that type of services, not the fiber optic, that's under, utilities, which is a separate.
Does this also include things like, radio towers used by emergency services?
No, this is only for private entities run by the private operator. Not, it does not include emergency towers or services.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have comments.
There's one question following up on his question. This applied only communications on city property or things that might be built on like in this area,
It applies to every telecommunication
whether
facility.
it's on private property or not.
Correct.
That's good, thank you.
So just a quick, while we're amending this, was there any is this only for the registration side of it, or is it applicable to enhancing the aesthetics of some of these towers? Like we see in some areas, they look like trees, they can really blend in very nicely. Is there any consideration to the aesthetics of these?
So the current LDR has very strong, the requirements about the trees and hedges. It's just I'm going to be honest, I think it's just we haven't been able to review against the code very clearly. So by one of the reasons we are establishing this annual registration requirement, when they register, they have to register before October 1st, and they have to provide plans showing what's there, how has been maintained, so we can keep up with those locations and see if there is any improvements done, they are applicable to those, the associated standards, which including hedges, trees, or cleaning up, or attaching or providing signage around the compounds for security and safety.
My question was specifically on the tower itself. Above, I understand the site requirements that the code requires, but I looked in this area that you're referring to, and I didn't see any requirements for the possibility of them changing aesthetically the tower itself. To make it look, sometimes they can make them look like trees and things that are very appealing. You don't even know that there's a cell tower. Any thoughts to that at all?
No, that's actually optional, and it depends on where it's located. It's still, you're referring to cell tower. Those are required in certain areas, as well as it has a limitation, but it's not going to be part of this amendment. But we do have those standards for the cell towers and where they can be, what size.
this is more the process than the application.
Correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board? And it's in, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like it's, member Micho, it sounds like it's a means to be able to, gather a little bit of information on what is, present on these sites, so that the staff can have a record of that, to be able to track it moving
Yeah,
forward.
there's no process currently.
Right, no, now it's just a fee paid and move on, and this is a means to, kind of capture or identify, items on the site that address the environmental regulations. So, very good. So with that, do we have a motion? You made a few this evening, so carry on.
I move that we approve the wireless communications facility annual registration CDRV 23-007 as outlined in the agenda tonight and presented by the staff.
Second.
Who's that? Thank you.
And
I'm just gonna say for the record, that was, Mr. Sinar, Weiner, sorry.
I mean, not to get picky here, but you guys are your voting member tonight, and the voting member can't technically second the motion. But just thought I'd make that comment.
which we can have another member second.
Yeah, I would do that.
Okay, we'll have a second by member McGuire.
Sure, second.
Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just.
My sister. Right, because member Swire is an alternate.
Oh.
Member McGuire was just, Mr. McGuire was just indicating that, the second should be made by.
I apologize. Okay, it wasn't written as an alternate, thank you, sorry.
Okay. Very good, so we have a second. Those in
Aye.
favor? Aye. Those against? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much for the
I'm
presentation.
sorry, who was the second?
McGuire.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 7E, the abandonment of the 30-foot wide unimproved right of way for the Shalimar project.
Good evening, board. David Villacher on behalf of the applicant, 14 Southeast 4th Street, Boca Raton. We're here tonight for the abandonment of a remnant right-of-way based off of the Palm Beach Farms plat. And as you can see on this aerial, the yellow is the proposed 30-foot right-of-way that's before you tonight. And the applicant's property is just to the east. Again, this is just a depiction of the right-of-way as it relates to the approved site plan. We're here based off of condition number 10 of the master plan site plan development orders, which required the property owner to initiate this abandonment proceeding. Staff has recommended approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Very good. And just before we kind of go into, first let's look at public comment. I'll turn it over to the floor. Do we have none?
Go ahead, I think your code says that your quasi-judicial procedures apply to right away. Normally other codes don't, but yours does, so you can go ahead and give disclosures if necessary.
Okay, so we have, first of all, after we have no public comment, any members of the board, expert communications with the applicants prior to.
I have a question I might.
Which,
Yeah.
I think we're still.
If this is abandoned, who owns the property?
Typically, whenever a right-of-way is abandoned, it would go 50-50 between the adjacent property owners.
You would get 15 feet. Who is the property owner on the other side who would get 15 feet?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. You can ask your legal counsel. So next to it's the Quail Ridge Country Club. There's various legal decisions that relate to whether or not if a prior plat excluded the right of way, whether or not they're still entitled to it. Our client doesn't care either way, whether they get the full or half. Again, we're here purely because we have to be based off the condition of approval.
Again, the second part of my question is, if we abandon this, you're getting a piece of property that's worth some money. Is there any compensation to the city?
No.
What's the motivation for the city for doing this?
Again, this is a remnant parcel, and we have, again, we are here purely because it's a condition of approval for us to initiate. You can recommend to deny, which is fine. We have met our condition, so it would be a burden on the city because the city would be liable for any actions on the property. They are liable for maintenance of the property. So as staff has provided, they're recommending approval to, I can't speak for them, but to avoid liability and responsibilities for maintenance.
Okay, last question, then I'm done. Do you have any proposals to landscape this property if you abandon it?
No,
What are you gonna do with it?
there's no plans at this time to do anything with the property.
May I,
The city doesn't require you to maintain
They
it.
have an answer right here, Jay.
Yeah, I know, you have no plans for it. The city would have no obligation to maintain it, because this becomes an overgrown area.
No. Based off of the city's rules, there are requirements related to the maintenance of landscaping, such as, I don't know exactly what the code says, but other cities or the county has something called overgrown, uncultivated landscape material, which is anything that's over 18 inches. So there could be something that would require the property owner to mow it.
All right, thank you.
so we have, engineering staff, Shallow. She's here to add a little more stories about this, right-of-way amendment. And this, right-of-way is currently unpaved, unused. So she's here.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Is this on?
Is the microphone to your right?
Is it on?
Or that one?
Good evening, my name is Charlotte Toller. I'm with the Engineering Department of Public Works. This was a portion of Shalimar condition of approval to abandon the right-of-way that is currently unimproved. It is also along the northern border of the city limits. Therefore, the right-of-way abandonment would go completely to the property to the south, which is Shalimar. That's based on, there's the city limits and the limits of the plat. As far as landscaping requirements, I'm going to have to defer to planning and zoning. I don't recall there being specific landscape requirements. Do you recall that?
Yeah, hi, Louis Cosme, senior planner.
Your mic is not on.
Louis Cosme, senior planner with the city. The city does have, I don't have it off, in my head, but the city does have an ordinance. It's not part of the land development regulation, but it's an ordinance for the maintenance of properties that requires, the lawn, the lawn to be trimmed and landscaping to be maintained.
Which is within
That is, yeah,
code
which is
enforcement.
in line with what you mentioned.
Yes.
Just to add, I was a planner that actually reviewed this project when it came in, a year ago, I believe. When the city there's an improved right of way or, alleyway that doesn't serve a purpose, the city usually requires the property owner to abandon it, to initiate this process.
The city has no intentions
In the future.
to put a road there, so it is property that would best be utilized by this development to maintain, so the city is, it's just not being used by the city.
And also added to the tax roll.
Very good.
And I believe that obviously it'll be landscaped and built out as part of the project, so it's not gonna be an area that's not improved. It's obviously gonna be improved now. It's gonna.
That is not what's been stated.
That's not.
It has to be maintained. but it will be up to the property owner to choose to utilize that property, maybe landscape.
So typically, when cities abandon right-of-ways and assign the property to the adjoining property owners, there's usually an agreement, a maintenance agreement, some type of an agreement to take it from unimproved to improved and with perpetual maintenance. So we're saying we're gonna abandon the right-of-way and not have any requirement or any easement or maintenance agreement with that parcel.
I mean, the easement would be, along the right of way, right, usually that are, but no.
But it won't be anymore, it's gonna be incorporated in, once it's abandoned, it then becomes part of his property. It's like you said, it's taxed and surveyed, and it's very different, because as you mentioned, it's at our boundary, our further southwest boundary. So I just wanna make sure we do have some conditions that if there's gonna be improvements, that we're not gonna have an unimproved right-of-way that stays an unimproved right-of-way because of this recommendation. I just wanna make sure it gets improved one way or another.
So just
Otherwise, we're defeating the purpose of abandonment. The city wants it abandoned because it's not maintained, and it'll be in between the two blocks.
So as it relates to improved, this is not going to be improved with any structures. As it relates, if you want to say improved with sod, then yes, this is, right now, this has, I believe it has some trees on it, it has some type of native grass covering, that would all remain the same. And as codified in your code, the property owner, every property owner is required to maintain the property based off whatever the code is. And that will continue to be the fact whether this is approved or not.
Any other questions or comments?
So, in other words, that abandonment parcel, you will fence in and it'll be part of Shalimar?
I don't know what the site plan shows right now, but this is outside of the limits of our approved site plan. So I don't know if there's a wall and then a landscape buffer. So this will just be in addition to the approved landscape buffer, which would remain, however it is today. I mean, I can't speak for the property owner or for staff, but it's likely going to remain in its existing condition.
Just sort of an abandoned.
It doesn't make any sense, guys.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense. I'm kind of in agreement with that. It doesn't sound like the presenter is exactly clear on what will be here and how it will be handled. And the city's recommendation is to approve it. And I think I just understood that this would probably lie outside the property line of Shalimar, but they own it. I mean, when I say outside the property line, kind of the architectural linear structures and pavements, and perhaps a wall maybe.
Again, as the applicant, mentioned, it is part of the conditional approval of the project when it was proposed and approved, for that portion to be abandoned again and added, to the property. The boundary would essentially change to include that. Right. There is a proposed landscape buffer. I can't remember what it was, type 2 landscape buffer, I believe, maybe type 5 because it's similar, in requiring picture. But however, it will be just outside. You have the landscape buffer and then that additional sodded area.
Right. So this project came before while I was on the board, I believe. You were on the board as well, and Bush, and I think you were as well. So when this project came through, I personally applied a conditional approval on this project because there are a lot of existing well-established native trees on the property that's going to be developed within the former portion of that we add to the proposed tree count, and whether we can relocate, the items that we can relocate or replace with kind of this equal tree or like-sized trees into that particular easement, or this right of way, I'm sorry. So, can you is there any record of what the commission, did they override that condition of approval? Did they include that condition of approval when they when the commission approved this project initially?
So that condition of approval remained, and I mean, I can read it to the record if you like.
Just so the applicant can be familiar.
Correct. The condition reads, prior to permitting, the applicant is required to initiate vacation and abandonment application for the abandonment of the platted right-of-way within the city of Boynton Beach running along the west property line.
Oh, but so that doesn't include the condition of approval that this board applied when they approved this project, which was that more native trees should be planted in that right-of-way.
Correct.
Okay, so then that got negated. So my comment, suggestion, my comment is that if the applicant is seeking to abandon the right-of-way and is becoming part of their land, it's required to be improved. It's an improvement to your client that they now have additional green space, open space, active space that they could utilize. Is it a benefit to your client to move the west landscape buffer to the western side of that? And this is something that they can do, to reposition the west landscape buffer further west to the western side of the right-of-way and engage that space and make that space become part of your development.
I think that would rest on whether or not the plan would have to get a master plan and site plan amendment.
Would this be something, if this goes through, is this something that's done at staff level, or does this have to go back through?
It should be done at staff level, I believe, as a minor site plan modification.
Right, because it doesn't, you're not changing your building, your layout, your driving patterns or anything like that. So I don't think it's anything that would require review process other than staff level.
So to add more, once its abandonment is done, that piece of land must be unified with this main.
Well, then all the more reason that your client would be benefiting from the property that they've now gained, and it wouldn't be logical that they would have all this extra land that they could allow the residents to utilize and just leave it abandoned. So I think that would be.
You need parking, so you could put some parking there.
Right, you could shift, yeah, because now you could shift some of your parking, you could do even, then now that's a site plan application that they have to come back for, so they're probably going to do that. But, if we don't have any more comments, I would almost like to say if we make a motion, I would like to apply a condition of approval with that. Do we have any other comments?
Just one, it strikes me, we're giving them 30 feet probably. You just raise something, moving the wall further out, moving the parking further away. Or, I mean, it just strikes me, what's to prevent the applicant from saying, oh, now I got this 30, I can do all kinds of things with it. I can get more parking spaces, like certainly 30 feet with the driveway going through there would be enough. I'm a little bothered by giving someone 30 feet of land. Just that, you know, I know which condition you have to, without any restrictions. I guess I'd support it and have faith that the people developing this want to sell this and they can probably beautify this. I just don't know what they're gonna do with it. That's all.
With the right-of-way portion?
Yes.
I don't know that they're
Not the right way, they're very abandoned, a piece of property, I don't know how long it is, 30 feet wide, you can do an awful lot with it.
Right, but I don't think there's any use case that you think development requirements wouldn't allow them to be constructed within that.
Okay, in that case, then I'm very, you wanna make a condition amendment to the?
Well, hang on, I'd like to just comment.
Go ahead.
Good, I'm sort of okay with it, but it just sounds, there's a lot of vagueness. The applicant.
I agree.
The applicant is actually saying the owner doesn't really want it, doesn't care either way. And so obviously to them, they probably look at this as another headache if they have to resubmit. So if we vote it down and it becomes the city's burden to go check it out, make sure homeless people aren't there or whatever. And it's sort of, it's almost as if this is how I'm reading it, that Shalimar really doesn't want it. And the city wants to give it to them, because it's just gonna cost them more landscaping and more maintenance with their crews. So, that said, I mean, I think that the language has to be pretty clear where it's not now, that the Shalimar is going to take that as a condition by the city. They have to make a little bit more of a recommendation of what they're gonna do with that 30 feet before we just sort of blindly approve it. I mean, not saying I wanna approve it right here, because I'm wondering why this hasn't begun already, honestly. Has there been other holdups besides this?
Again, we have satisfied the condition. We have initiated the process, and whether or not it gets approved or not, it's not preventing us from moving forward.
So can I jump in for?
Yeah, sure.
So this is our furthest western south boundary. So if they were not to, if the city didn't recommend it to abandon it, then the property owner would build as the site plan was already approved. And then we would have this 20 or 30 foot unimproved right of way that the city would have be very hard to maintain, and basically would just be continue as an unimproved right of way. And so there's no utility easements there. They've already stated there's really no use in the future for a future road. So it just makes sense that it's abandoned, and typically it does go to the two adjoining property owners. In this case, it's the last property to the west, so therefore all the property would go. But typically the conditions that we should put on it is that we require that it's improved and is incorporated as part of the site plan.
So what are you saying? We should say let the abandonment happen, but we don't really know what they're gonna do.
Well, it's the city has made it a requirement, so it's not, they're required to do it. That's why they're saying, hey, we don't even want it, but we're required to do it, because the city, it would put us in a conundrum to have that 20 or 30 feet that would be almost, it's not maintained now, and we would have to then maintain it. So now he's gonna be required to maintain it, but he gets the valuation of that 30 feet by the length of the project to increase the valuation. He could adjust his site plan, but if he doesn't wanna come back, then, but there still needs to be conditions that that's maintained.
And has that been established here, that they will maintain that?
This is the code requires.
Discussing right now.
Right of ways have in the code, there's land development regulations for maintenance of vacant lots.
Right, code enforcement. If nothing's done with it, code enforcement takes over and they monitor and make sure it's.
We're on the planning side, so we can prevent those are problems for the city. So the city's trying to prevent from having those problems with code enforcement, maintaining it, and going back and forth, who should take care of the city.
I know, but my point is that it's just not clear here, you know, I'm not gonna get clarity from the applicant, and the city is giving it to them because it's just too small, they don't want to handle it, I get all of it, but like I said, like, you know, we potentially could be creating a problem here if we just say, okay, and let's just see what happens, you know?
But it's not our problem that we're creating, it's the city commission's problem. If you read this, the city commission told them to abandon it and to start that procedure. This is just a step in that process. We're not being asked to make any real decisions here other than to move this process through based on what the city commission told them to do.
Right.
But the commission was taking staff's recommendations. It came through the staffing and planning recommendations because the staff.
Didn't go before the commission. This amendment didn't go before the city commission.
No, the site plan originally.
So the original site plan, yeah.
It came from staff,
But this-
staff made the recommendation.
Right, but this didn't go back, so this is coming through us again.
I understand, he should be saying that.
This is the process to go through a right-of-way abandonment. We are a step in that process. And by virtue of the fact that they have applied to the city or to whoever to abandon this right-of-way, it's now coming to us because we need to, we're just another step in the process. If you look in your packet, there's a picture of the sign that they've got posted on their site out there. It's got this meeting and it's got 2 subsequent city commission meetings. So they're gonna have to go before the city 2 more times on this same issue. So we've discussed this before, we can do it, you can say all you want here, it doesn't matter, it's, you know, above our pay grade. But the bottom line is, The commission told them to come and go through this process. That's what the gentleman is doing, that's what his company is doing. We can say what we want, it's not gonna carry through.
I get it. But
The city doesn't want this.
Yeah, but my point is, it's not clear on how and what and who this will be handled. It doesn't give clarity on, and that's my comment. I don't mean to, I get your whole protocol, and I understand it, believe me. But, I mean, I think this is potentially, could be a future issue, you know? And that's my point. So to just, and I get it, the commission's gonna be the end-all be-all, and things that we voted down in the past year, many of them just go right through. So, you know, I'm just saying, it doesn't seem, like, if I was the presenter here, I'd be like, dude, we got this covered, okay? We're gonna push the landscaping back a little bit, we're gonna put some grass there, they're gonna cut it, don't worry.
The applicant technically.
I didn't hear it.
The owner.
The owner, I'm just saying, I didn't hear that.
All that you wanna do. All that you wanna do is gonna require a different site plan change. And they're gonna have to go back to the commission, back to change the site plan.
Well, that's why I asked the question, if we just request that they reposition the buffer, that can be, approved with their staff review, rather than have to go through.
But they're gonna have to go to this commission anyway.
They have to go there anyways, but that's for the amendment process, which is
I mean, we can go
all they
back
have
and
to do
forth,
is
back and
initiate it,
forth,
and they can move forward.
or we can say, you know, the commission told you to come here and ask us, so what are we gonna say?
Well,
Yes.
I listen to all this, but if we make a motion to accept this, with a conditional in the motion to accept it, that Shalimar takes responsibility for maintaining the land they acquired through the abandonment. It puts the onus on you, you may not like it, but it puts the responsibility on you, it makes very clear. Now, we have codes in the city.
That's gonna happen anyway.
It's in the code addresses.
I know, the code.
We do the abandonment, and the code addresses how it's gonna be treated.
Right, the code, it's matter, you look a little later on, there's something in papers we have that talk about, you know, people maintaining their property. So I'm happy to, if anyone wants to add to the motion, I'm happy to make a motion to accept item 7E, the abandonment of Ferguson Road improvement by unimproved right of way for the Shalimar project. Period.
I would like to apply a condition on that, so I don't know if we're ready to make a
Go ahead.
motion yet for.
So may I?
Yes.
This is an abandonment applications, it's solely questioning into unimproved, unused, and the city has no intention to utilize this road and simply abandon this land and becomes a part of the Shalimar. So having condition that providing landscaping or relocated buffers, that type of the conditions will not be really suitable for this abandonment applications. Once the abandonment is done and completed, the unity of title is required to combine these two pieces of land. It becomes under the current ownership, Shalimar ownership, and they have, under the city's ordinances, they must maintain it. They must maintain it. Now, if they want to create additional buffer to the project, or they are shifting their parking or changing the site, you know, those amendments has to go through the city process anyway. So having condition how this land is going to be done, it won't be suitable for this abandonment applications. I just wanted to clearly emphasize on that one.
Well, can we, within the approval, can we make a recommendation? I mean, it's in the minutes, we can make a recommendation to the commission about what we think would be a nice way to handle this, this parcel.
They have to maintain it. It is going to be under the, like you explained, it's a code.
No, we understand all of that, but there's native grasses that are there that are growing 30 inches tall that have to be maintained with a bush hog and a different means.
You mean the city doesn't maintain it?
Well,
The property they own, like on Gulf Road and every other street in this town?
all the city properties, but they don't get, code enforcement doesn't find them or go after them.
Right, well, that's another topic, but.
No, it's not.
Which we can,
It's
which
what
we can
this
bring up.
is. They have not, that's the far western area. There's Quail Ridge Golf Course to the west of that. I bet Quail Ridge takes care of that. I didn't go out and look at it, but I can almost guarantee you the city has never had a mower or a person on that piece of land, that area, since it's been there. I mean, you just look east of 95 on Gulf Road on the side. They don't mow it. There's, on June 26th, we had that little tornado that hit over there. There are still branches from the one tree. I had to call 47 days later, after the city came in and piled up the branches from the one, for them to take them away. How many Tuesdays did they come by and didn't pick them up? I called and I told them about the other ones. They still haven't got those either.
Well, we can bring this up under,
Yeah.
other.
So I would give them the land, let them do what they want.
Right.
I don't
The point that I'm trying to make is that this is farmland that's not been touched ever. We're developing and putting sod adjacent to that. A tenant or a resident within this property is not gonna make use of that land in its current condition. The owner is not going to do anything to the land because they're not forced to. So it just becomes, it's gonna stay looking like it is now, except it's gonna get mowed more frequently. The owners will make the residents will not be able to gain. They won't gain any use of the space that they now own.
I have a question to the applicant. That wall, that west wall, or line, I should say, before the 30 feet, on your master plan, is there a fence that you're putting up? If so, what material is it, how high is it?
I'm gonna defer to the staff, I don't know.
You mean the?
Right where that arrow's pointing, that's right where their land pretty much ends, do they have on their architectural plans a wall there, or a fence?
I don't recall there being a wall because it is abutting a residential property. And they require buffering requirements. I can.
In other words, if I park my car there, I live there, I can walk through those trees and right out into the golf course? Or does the golf course have a fence and a wall? Will there be two fences facing each other with 30 feet between?
Sure, that's the fear. I'll have to look into it. It's being a project that I haven't seen in quite, some time.
All right, well, I'm for, just to go forward and all that, but I'm not for voting on this. Just thought I'd put that out there.
All right, so where do we stand? Do we want to, so the.
Just a clarification, so, that's, I'm all for the abandonment for this project as long as there's gonna be clarity on the maintenance of it going forward. And so you're now, putting it into it. I would vote differently if it's not gonna be improved and it's gonna be a fence at the back of this property and the same 30 feet is just gonna be, we're just gonna give this land away without putting it into taxable property and improved, then I wouldn't be in favor of it, even though I'm sure the commission will do it, but I just couldn't in my right conscience know that I'm abandoning city property, taxpayers' property, giving it away, and not asking for it to be improved or taxed. That wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Once it's unified,
But if it's not improved, then it's just, a vacant land that's not gonna add a lot of value.
Do they unify the property has to.
Yeah, it'll be a unit of title, so it'll add another 30 feet to the overall property.
But once to the staff, once the.
You need to build buildings, you're
Unity
gonna add more taxes.
title, does that enforce them to have to maintain and
Absolutely.
landscape?
Yes.
I think the code addresses that part.
But not just to maintain it in the sense of mowing it, do they have to improve and landscape that area?
I would require
It is something that applicant choose to do so. If this is not one of the conditions, but if the applicant choose to improve and be part of this development and amend this site plan, they have options to do so.
But the unity of title does not require them to, sod and irrigate the land, for example.
If they choose you mean the sod
Within the landscape development regulations, not whether they choose to or not choose to.
The current code is, the tree preservation code requires removing of any invasive species. It requires specifically to maintain any land. So they will be subject to the removing invasive species and clean up the site.
But they could, and then they could just leave it alone after that, and just
Well,
mow it once a month or whatever it has to be.
Are you referring they need to be redone to expand their landscape areas?
In essence.
That's not something that is discussed in any condition of approval. Also, it was not discussed on the site plan, but if the applicant choose to do so, they can surely do that. Creating linear park or any type of improvements.
Right.
If they want, they can do it.
Do that, but within the commission's condition of approval, it only says to abandon it so that the city does not have to maintain it or be responsible for it from that day forward. The commission did not indicate that it has to be sodded and irrigated at a bare minimum.
If the commission choose to add a condition.
No, within the commission's current approval and condition of approval, it does not, it just states that they begin the process for request for abandonment. It does not indicate anything that once abandoned, it must be at a bare minimum sodded and irrigated.
Correct, it does not say.
Just says he has to apply, I think it's very straightforward.
Yep.
He's here, he said it twice,
That's
he's here
right.
because he has to be,
Right.
because the condition says he has to apply.
Right.
It doesn't sound like they care if they're awarded it or if they're not, so we need to decide, is it the city that needs to maintain it, or do we deed it over to them and they maintain it, per the code? It's very straightforward.
Yes.
Okay, we would have to do a better job of maintaining it. The city hasn't done anything for 30 years.
That's another night, another form, I'm sure.
You get tax dollars from it.
Okay,
Well,
So we can make a recommendation, guys, we're the planning board, they need that from us,
Right.
make a recommendation to them. Make it
I mean,
It's only a
what I
recommendation.
would wanna say here, thinking about what's the simplest, easiest way to just get this through and done, is if there is a buffer fence there on the golf thing, I just looked on Google Earth, so there's a fence there, so potentially right now, there really could be, I'm imagining there is a fence here behind these cars, there's gotta be. So there's gonna be a fence and a fence, if they just push that fence, I mean, out,
well, that was my
and just leave whatever's there, they wanna leave it natural or whatever, I'd be fine with that, but I think that would really make sense.
Right, so I wanted to apply a condition of approval to it, it's not appropriate in this scenario. So the recommendation is from this board, it seems pretty, consistent that the recommendation is that the applicant, that we eventually approve, the abandonment through vote, but that the recommendation would be that the applicant reposition the west buffer to the new western property line and sod and irrigate at a bare minimum the additional land that they've acquired. That's our recommendation for the board. Does everyone agree with that?
I can agree with that.
Okay, so that at least goes into the record. The commission, they can do with it what they will at that point. Right, so with that being said, do we have a motion to approve item 70?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve 7E, the abandonment of 30 feet wide unimproved right of way for the Shalimar project with the amendment that they push the berm and plantings to the edge of their property where they currently have them.
Okay, I think you all said it's a recommendation,
Yes.
right?
Right, because
Excuse me, with a recommendation, I'm sorry, yeah, correct my word, not an amendment, a recommendation.
Not a condition of approval.
Yeah, not a condition of approval, a recommendation.
that the buffer be repositioned and that the
The 30 feet.
irrigated.
And be sodded and irrigated.
Do I have a second? Need to speak up so that we can.
I second the motion.
Member Sobel, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, very good. That was, for the record, that was Member Litch. Thank you.
And for the record, the applicant objects to your condition of approval. We feel that it's inappropriate. And, I guess we'll take it up with city council. Thank you.
No condition.
It wasn't a condition.
It's a recommendation, not a condition. Thank you very much. All right, so do we have, moving on to the agenda, item 8, other business? Would you like to comment or address any of the items discussed during the last? Okay. Very good. Yes.
I have comments.
Yes.
So based on what we just went through, I sat in the CRA meeting, and it was the same, kind of a similar issue. I thought I'd just share it with you. So the parcel that is called the Pierce, you're all familiar with it, is going to be on hold. I don't know if you're all aware of that, potentially for at least a year because of existing litigation. So they had their application.
That's the one that's across the street, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
The one that's on the corner where the Warrior Park is, right there and all that. So, they had, Jeff Burns, the CEO of Affiliated, was there, speaking on behalf of Affiliated, and that the property owner, David Camelier, that owns the ice cream boardwalk, condition of abandonment issues, exactly what we're going through here, are delaying that project's construction for basically anywhere from 2 months, let's say, what they were saying, I'm trying to reiterate, to maybe a year, even longer. Because it's gonna go to court, and they're not suing the Pierce or Affiliated, they're suing the city. So, that's, when I walked out of that meeting, I realized, as a city commissioner or CRA or board member, probably this could have been remedied if we talked to Camelier before and said, take his temperature and realize how heated he was about the abandonment issues. There was a right of way that went through there, apparently. It was a street they're taking out, essentially, is I think one of the big issues there, right? So it may not seem like a lot, but that's why I was very hesitant to kind of go forward with that without some clarity, because there could be another abandonment issue that could potentially delay this for many years. I doubt there'll be litigation over this because this is a much more lame type of situation. But anyway, I'll just finish up by saying it was a very long discussion, and this is definitely going to go to court. And I believe there was a countersuit involved, so they were asking the CRA's approval to, if they win this down the road, they don't have to resubmit. Apparently, if you resubmit for the master, you can now lose another 120 days or so forth and so on. So that's the general gist. I just wanted to get the board up to date on it. And I thought there was some overlap here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, just a footnote with that, Cortland, thank you for bringing that up. I think most of us are very aware of that. One of the conditions that, if you remember, some of the adjoining property owners came to us, Broadway Ice Cream, Ace Hardware, were very concerned about their ability to be able to have access to the alleyway because we were abandoning a portion of the alleyway and the roadway and the whole traffic circulation. So at the end, in fact, I made that recommendation that we ask that it be staff, commission, that they meet with the adjoining property owners and work that out. It was one of the conditions we gave them. Now, whether that actually happened, and that's a very important part because it led to this litigation. But I honestly believe it'll be settled. I really don't think it'll go to court. I've seen this happen before. This is not new in the development approval business. I think in reading the case, it's more on the approval process, how the approval process happened that they're concerned with more so than the actual abandonments and the right of way and the accessibility issues, which are really the property ownership concerned about. But point well taken, and yes, we'll be watching that, but hopefully it won't get hung up in too long.
Yes.
Is there anything other business we have before we adjourn?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to add one other, kind of question is when you're discussing the process, regarding any ex parte or otherwise with the, applicant or the business owners prior to commission meetings. Is that kind of what you're suggesting that, that potentially that needs to happen, right? So if you
The
have.
golf course, like, maybe we should
Right.
abandon it to them.
Well, but, you know, right, typically it's a right of way split in half, right? They've already, I mean, the applicant is the one that acknowledged in this scenario that the golf course didn't want it. We didn't hear from anyone from the golf course. We didn't have representation, so can we believe it, can we not believe it, right?
Well, the core
We
makes
don't
a
know,
good point,
right?
because we're
No.
trying to annex, and that would have been a good carrot. Hey, we'll abandon this 30 foot between, and we'll deed the property to you, if you'll, because in order to annex, you have to be contiguous to your boundaries, and we're looking to go west, and, I don't think the city can be that conduit to go west, so.
Right, but with regards to the Pierce project, if the neighboring properties now have issue after this was approved, if they have no knowledge that they can go in prior to a commission meeting and have meetings with commissioners, their only opportunity is the 3 minutes that they're given at the commission meeting. So I agree with what you're saying, and I think potentially the staff may be able to make a better case or make it better known to neighboring properties, to any applicant, that they have the right to be able to have a one-on-one meeting with a commissioner prior to meetings. So maybe that's what comes out of this conversation is that, you know, that we recommend staff that they make it a little bit more available to neighboring properties rather than just sending out mailers, because everybody gets a mailer when something comes in. Nobody really knows what to do with it other than show up at the meeting and oppose it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Your other thing on that though, if on the golf course thing, Quail Ridge, that's county. Versus city, the whole 30 feet city. So now is Quail Ridge gonna have to pay taxes on that 30 feet strip?
Which maybe that's why they didn't.
They wouldn't want
They're
it.
not in the city, so they wouldn't be part of abandonment to an unincorporated part. They're not part of the equation, that's why they want.
Very good.
Last motion of the night?
I'm pretty sure I know what you're about to say, let me just make sure that
Jay,
nothing else, and do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'm not making it.
No? You
I
can't.
move we adjourn.
Very good, do we have a second? Very good, thank you very much, everybody.
Second,
Thank you,
sorry.
Harper.
Thank you.
Yes. Very good. That's it.
I would.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Louis.
talk about that, Pierce.
Yeah.
I think you can vote, but you can't.
No, yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
But that's a good.